I'm a Zen Buddhist monk. I'm ordained in a Japanese Zen tradition. But I'm not Japanese. I'm really 100% U.S. American. My intention was never to become Japanese or to emulate the Japanese. I studied in Plum Village for 3 years. My time there was never to become Vietnamese. My intention was never clear to me. I never really knew what I was doing. I didn't have any goals. I didn't have anything that I wanted to accomplish. I came to Buddhist practice simply because it made sense to me. Coming out of and it supported me in arriving to a place where I could experience peace with my unpeacefulness. But what I had to understand was that sitting on the cushion is like sitting on a bomb. If we come to meditate, this is meditation practice. It's not medication practice. This is about waking up. That's the point of it. To wake up to the causes and conditions of our life. To wake up to the conditioning that we have inherited through endless streams of past generations, to the collective conscious of which we're a part. To wake up to the violence in us, the roots of war in us. To wake up to our sexism, our racism. To wake up to that which is uncomfortable for us to acknowledge. Because until I wake up to those essential points, there is no healing and transformation. It's only an idea in my mind. Peace is not what I call peace. Peace is a very fluid and active state that can only be realized in the moment that it's experienced. After some years of practice, I was living in a small hermitage in Concord, Massachusetts. I was washing dishes. And the way this thing was sink was, there was a window in front of the sink and I was watching the squirrels play. And suddenly I had the clear voice of awareness said to me, you know, you're not a good or a bad person because you killed people. And I am a murderer. I have killed people. I am not guessing at this. I know this. I'm not a good or a bad person because I've done this, but you are responsible. So, in acknowledging and accepting my responsibility, I have to be very cautious that I don't think I know what to do next. In understanding that I'm not a good or a bad person gives me the opportunity then to really embrace the causes and conditions of my life that dictated the choices, that dictated the decisions that I made that put me in the position to take human life, to destroy property, to decimate the environment. It led me to really be able to reflect more openly on those topics. Because if I look at myself as a good or a bad person because of what I've done, I'm not going to look there. Because in the lexicon it's considered, hey, you kill somebody, you're a bad person, man. You know, it's just not right. That's how I was raised, right? You're raised, don't kill. But in accepting the fact that I'm not a good or a bad person is immediately the transcendence beyond relative understanding into the absolute realm, which is not separate from the relative understanding of life. Good, bad, right, wrong, yes, no. But this place of understanding beyond intellect. The only way I can get there, however, is through a disciplined practice. I want to read something short to you. I don't often do this, but sometimes I do. Over the Tang Dynasty, Buddhism and Zen Buddhism in particular grew to the point where there could have been no class of people or general geographical region untouched by its influence in the China of the Song Dynasty. The problem was, as predicted in Buddhist scripture, that the very success of the work would eventually attract the wrong kind of people, or rather that too many people would come with the wrong aspirations. According to Zen teaching, when people in positions of great responsibility in society trust Zen adepts, it may be because of the reputation Zen gained over the centuries in this enterprise, or it may be an unconscious response to the safety felt in the presence of a truly detoxified human being. In either case, the false appeared in such profusion precisely because the truth was so effective. Be careful. Be very, very careful in approaching the practice of meditation, in approaching the essential teachings through which these practices grew out of. Aspiration. The aspiration to enlightenment is the key. And enlightenment isn't some blissful, detached state of existence. It's living really intensely in this moment. I want to share one more piece with you. It's out of this book, At Hell's Gate. I've been told this is a really good book. I've read out of it a few times. It's written by a really interesting guy. The book was first published in 2004. And to mark the release of the book, I did a pilgrimage. I walked from Concord, Massachusetts. I started at the site of the North Bridge. At the North Bridge, that's the site of the first battle. They say the first battle of the American Revolution. It's not really true, but they say it. So I started in Concord, Massachusetts, and then I walked from Concord, Massachusetts to Washington, D.C., to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And when walking, I walk without money. I have to beg for everything. I'm a mendicant by vow. What happens when I arrive in a village, or a small town, excuse me, I'm not in Europe anymore. When I arrive in a small town, I approach the religious institutions in that town and I ask them if they can introduce myself, ask them for a simple place to stay and simple food to eat. And I accept it if they say no. I bow to them in gratitude and I go to the next place. There was a town, I don't know where it was in New Jersey or it was in Maryland, someplace where the church agreed to host us. But there was something going on with the children. So what they did is they took us and they moved us to another part of the building, hold us up in a room and said, until the children leave, don't leave the room. You can't intermix with them. Because, of course, they didn't know us. We're foreign. There is this fear being bred into our children that they can't interact with strangers. They can't learn anything new. It's like they're being held hostage to our fears, our doubts, and our insecurities. I didn't argue with them. I respected them. And I can remember at one point I left the room and I was going to the bathroom and I passed one of these young kids in the hall and I felt like a criminal. Like I'd done anything, like I was poisoned or something. It's incredible the impact that fear has on us. That's what drove me to enlist in the military. That's what drove me to volunteer to go to Vietnam. That's what drove me to participate in a war that was responsible for the deaths of millions of people, the decimation of hundreds of thousands of acres of beautiful jungle that we need to preserve our own atmosphere. Fear. The roots of war are not external. The cause is not external, the cure is not external. The roots of war are in us. It's very personal. If we want the world to be different, we need to live differently. To live differently, we need to wake up to the roots of war in us. And this what you're experiencing here, this what Tara invites you to, is a tool to support you in that process. The point is, how do you take what you experience here and carry that into your daily life? Because enlightenment and daily life are not two things. From page 159. In California, I had one of my first encounters with a veteran of the war in Iraq. This young man had been involved in the initial invasion. After we met, we began to correspond via email. He shared with me that he had been struggling emotionally since returning home from combat. One day he wrote to me, "I have gone a little deeper in my depression. I feel like I'm in a black hole and can't get out. I'll make half-hearted attempts to change, but shortly get sucked back into feeling sorry for myself. I cut myself again. It was worse than the times before. This time, I cut a 4-inch deep laceration on my right leg, and it required many sutures. I lied about how it happened. The thing about it was I felt so much better afterward. It was almost liberating. I'm not proud of this and I'm not bragging, but I needed to tell someone." When I first read this message, I felt a sense of disconnection from this man, just the way I did in combat when I saw other soldiers get wounded. And yet, at the same time, I identified so deeply with his desperate attempt to find some relief from his pain. By cutting himself, he's creating pain that he can see and touch. Maybe this helps him to feel he has some control over it. I have known this kind of separation from myself and the world around me. It can become so cold and vast that it unravels the very fabric of existence. This is very serious business, this undertaking to wake up. It is not an intellectual process. We have at our disposal the tools to change the world. If we understand that the world and self are not two things. It doesn't matter that I can, know all the techniques. It doesn't matter if I can talk the talk. It doesn't matter if I've read all the sutras or I wear the right clothes or I talk in the right voice or I listen to the correct music. These are not the important things. The important thing is that I sit just to sit. Every day. First thing before I get up, sit. Connect with my breath, because the breath is the very foundation of life. If I'm not connected with my breath, I am not living in this moment. And this moment is all that we have. Nothing else exists. There is no past. There is no future. There is only this moment. Now, living in this moment, all things exist. The past is here, and the future is here. That's why this moment is so critical. And yet, we are so conditioned to seek extinction endlessly, to escape this moment. It's like amazing to me. Every time I see, when we would walk, pilgrimage has been an essential part of my practice. Since 1994, I've walked about 45 to 48,000 miles. Kenshin has walked all but 5,000 of those miles with me. We walked from Yonkers, New York to San Francisco. Why Yonkers? I was ordained in Yonkers. And walking through, we walked through a lot of countryside, a lot of farms and cows. And whenever we would walk, the cows would get very curious. Really, they'd get all excited, and they'd be running and watching us and looking until you approach them. You approach them, they don't want anything to do with you. Huh? They know. Huh? But interesting, when you watch the cows, there's always one or two of those cows that think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. It's the same grass. But they're convinced that it's better on the other side. They cut themselves, they get hung up in the fence, and don't we do the same thing? The cause of my difficulties are not external, the cure for them is not external. If I want there to be peace in the world, I have to embody the peace that I want to see. And the only way that I can discover what the peace what peace really is to wake up to the roots of war in me. Now, I'm fortunate in the fact that there's just no hiding from the suffering I've created in the world. I tried for years, but it was impossible for me to avoid it. It accompanies me everywhere. That is both a blessing and a curse. It's a curse because in the community, the very special community that I belong to, those of the community of veterans, one of us commits suicide every 62 minutes. Think about that. And why is that? Because we don't have the support to integrate the power of the experience. The reality, when our reality is shattered, or our idea of reality is shattered, and suddenly we're exposed to suffering and the inhumanity at its most purest level. We don't know how to incorporate that with the ideologies we've been conditioned to. Buddhist practice is not about ideology. It's not about what we think. It's not about what we say, but rather what we do. Sitting is critical to that place is critical to inspire the quality of self-reflection, turning the light inward. But when we begin to turn the light inward, we must be incredibly cautious. It's a very, very powerful practice. To do that without a community of like-minded people, that is a community that is supported by an authentic teacher, one can get themselves in a lot of trouble. The mind, Gesundheit, the mind is such a powerful entity. Sitting in meditation, in any given moment, one can simply fall right through themselves. And the world can suddenly look very confusing, startling, and unsettling. And without the support and guidance of a community of like-minded people and an authentic teacher, it's so very easy to end up locked in a psychiatric ward, man. Because we can't. Well, how do you incorporate some of the things that happen to us in this process of turning the light inward? I've seen it happen. Don't underestimate what goes on here. I was first introduced to meditation when I was 14. I'm now 65. But the meditation that I was introduced to early on was not the meditation of awakening and liberation, but a meditation concentrated on controlling the intellect. I was introduced to meditation through the martial arts. I studied and practiced martial arts for 27 years. until there was this epiphany. I was conducting a class. This was in the Boston area. I was conducting a class of people from different traditions from all over the Boston area. And one of the things that we did is I'd have a circle of people, and then one person would stand in the middle, and they would have to fight everybody in that circle for 2 minutes. You know, martial arts is not an instrument of peace. Don't ever be confused about that. I heard two people talking. I was walking around the circle because of my job to make sure nobody got hurt. I heard two people talking to one another, and one person said, you know, my style is superior to your style because I can whip your butt. When I heard that, it was like I fell right through myself. It was like, what am I doing here? This is not what I want to be about. And it was that point I took off the robes, my gi. I took off the robes of a martial artist. I stopped teaching kicks and punches and practicing kicks and punches, and I've never done it again. That's the point of meditation. Stopping. Becoming calm. It's not what I do, but what I don't do. So, from this evening forward, when you leave, talk a bit less. Talk a bit more softly. When you walk a bit more slowly. Feel your feet when they touch the ground. Feel the air as you move through it. Risk being willing to hear with your whole being, not just take sounds in through your ear. And if you think you're hearing with your whole being, you're not. You're only thinking. Take the risk to be present. And that takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes the willingness to let go of everything we thought to be true and correct in the world. Meditation is about the process of deconstructing all that I thought that I was. Allowing that process to take place. So that there is then the possibility to become. That is the point of practice. To wake up. And if there's anything that I can do to support you in that process, don't hesitate to ask me. That's why I'm here. I wear robes as a symbol of my commitment to serve Buddha. Now, Buddha is not the guy's name. We get confused about this, I think. Buddha is not that fat golden statue in a Chinese restaurant. That's not Buddha. Buddha is simply a word which means awake, enlightened. And and the truth be told, every single person in this room is already enlightened. What prevents us, however, from living our enlightened nature is our conditioning, our suffering, the karma which we have inherited. So the robes are a symbol of my commitment to serve Buddha, to serve all of you. So if there's anything I can do to support you on your path, do not hesitate to ask me, or hesitate and ask me anyway. I am a 21st century monk. I have a laptop. I have email. Donate it. I have a cell phone. I do text messages. but not too much. And technology is a very useful thing if it's not abused. For those of you who do buy the book, my email address is in the back of the book. For those of you who don't want to buy the book, you can't have my email address. No. No. For those of you who aren't interested in the book or don't want to buy the book, but still would like my email address, see me after. But enough from me right now. What I want to do is open it up for your questions. But first, I'm going to put a frame around this. You can ask me any question you want. Nothing is out of bounds, providing it's a question. Please don't try to be clever. Please don't try to be deeply intellectual or supremely Buddhist. Ask your question in, this is a meditation group. Ask your question in 10 words or less. Direct and to the point. And remember, this is not an opportunity for you to give a co-lecture. If you want to have this seat, you're going to have to talk to somebody in the group that organizes this. This is not your time. That being said, questions? Let's see. Oh, back there's one. Oh, yeah, clear over there. What's that?
Take the mic.
So the question was, how does pilgrimages create enlightenment?
Yeah. Or
They
maybe
don't.
That's not the purpose. Okay.
You don't have to create enlightenment. You can't. Often pilgrimages are looked at as a journey to a holy place. I used to get a bunch of people, put them on a bus, drive them there, and they go there and they go, they're in. But this is not the point of pilgrimage. The holy place is here. The temple is right here. And what happens through the process of pilgrimage is that I'm confronted again and again and again by my suffering, the roots of war in me. And grounded in the discipline of my practice, I have the opportunity to not allow that suffering to control me. So it's... yeah, I like that. Question. Behind you.
Yes, how does one open oneself to deconstructing oneself?
Keep sitting. Just keep sitting. And you must have the burning desire to want to let go of all of the ideas that you ever thought to be true. If we don't have that burning desire, if we don't have a disciplined practice, then we're only fooling ourselves. We're only going through motions here. Question? In the middle, here's one.
Since as you mentioned, since meditation can and kind of bring up the emotional trauma in a traumatized population, how do you recommend those people begin the process of sitting and meditating?
So how do you begin to process trauma?
Well, maybe not so specifically trauma, but for that population.
Yeah. Population that has suffered emotional trauma, to get them to see.
Well, I mean, every one of us has our Vietnam. There's not a person here who hasn't experienced trauma at some level. And it's a danger to start comparing whose trauma is worse than whose, or who's less than whose. You can't. What is it? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I've changed that idiom a bit. You can lead a horse to water. You can't make it drink, but you can make it thirsty. If we don't want to wake up, if we're unwilling to really deal with this, the realities of our life, we won't do it. And nothing will change that. There isn't really anything I can do. There isn't anything anyone else can do. Thanks. And it's a trap to think, and I fall victim to this trap sometimes. I think if my practice were just more profound, if I were to just that something's preventing me from going deeper, because if my practice was strong enough or it was deep enough, then I would find a way to crack open every single person. I would be able to stop those suicides. It's just, that's my own suffering. That's my own sense of powerlessness that's driving me away from the truth of itself. I am powerless. There is nothing I can really do except, I have a map. I know the process. I know the way. I can point the path to you, but I can't walk it for you. I can't set your foot on it. All I can do is point in the direction. The 13th of April, 1983, I took 1,000 milligrams of barbiturates. That's a lethal dose. I survived with my brain intact. That I survived. When I survived, I was really angry that I survived, because life seemed so pointless to me. I just didn't see any way out of it. I thought that death would be a solution. So I get it why men and women take their lives. I get it. I may not understand the details of their experience, but I get it. While I was laying in the hospital bed in intensive care, 3 men came to visit me. And one of the men asked me, said, do you think you'll do this again? And I said, absolutely. I said, I'm done with this. I just want out. You know. And in death, there's relief. The guy looked at me and he said, how do you know? It could be worse. And I tell you, it was, in Zen practice, there is this phrase, a turning word. A turning word is the one thing that can be, you hear this one thing, and it just, wow, it just pierces through. And there's also a word in Zen practice, nen. Nen is often used to describe a thought experience. There are 3 forms of nen. Nen, the first form of nen is that pure thought experience before it's influenced by consciousness and conditioning. So that turning word evokes that first nen experience. And that's what this guy did. And I thought, oh my gosh, worse? I better get busy. And it was at that point that I took the first step. And the first step in the process of awakening rests in the 3rd precept. If you don't know the precepts, I would encourage you to at least become familiar with them. The 3rd precept, don't take intoxicants. So I had to stop taking intoxicants and stay stopped. Because as long as I was taking intoxicants, my mind didn't stand a chance. There was always a veil between myself and the world of which I'm an integral part. So I had to stop and stay stopped. That turning word led me to take the first step, which has resulted in my sitting here. In April, the 17th, in April, I will be facilitating a meditation retreat, a mindfulness meditation retreat for veterans and their family members. It will be at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. This will be the 5th year or 6th year. The first year that I facilitated this retreat, there were 12 people and 10 stayed. This year, there is already 120 registered with a waiting list. The power of mindful living, connecting it to the essential Buddhist practices, which doesn't require conversion or being a Buddhist or anything like that. We got too many Buddhists already. But those essential practices give people an opportunity to do something differently, to establish a more conscious relationship with their suffering. And they hear what they know to be the truth. They don't always like it, but they hear it. The reality of my experiences never go away. What I can learn to do, though, is to learn to develop a more conscious relationship with the reality of my life as it is now based on those experiences. And I can learn to develop peace with my unpeacefulness by stopping, turning the light inward, and allowing myself to become more calm, whatever that means.